Serpent Temple. This week we're going to be doing a weekly review. We're going to be looking at 3 albums. The first one is by the Japanese Flower Travellin Band. It is called Satori. The second one is 1914's The Blind Leading the Blind from 2018. And the third is the recent release by Noctule called Wretched Abyss. So, Floyd, I'm really curious as to what you thought of Satori by Flower Travellin Band.
So, once again, it's good to go back in time, almost 50 years ago. And I think the first thing that kind of struck me was just like, as similar with a lot of the other bands we've covered from this era, is just how fucking ahead of their time they are. Like, it's crazy how, one, they're really heavy.
Super heavy,
like, the guitars are super loud in the mix, and like, you know, and it's funny because every review I read of the band, everyone is always mentioning Sabbath, and like it kind of comes to mind when you first hear the vocals. Well, not the first scream, because the first scream scared the literal shit out of me. Like, I was not expecting that. But like a lot of the vocal melodies are kind of reminiscent of a lot of the bigger names during that time. Like, you know, there's hints of Robert Plant, Gillan from Deep Purple, and of course Ozzy. And I think they were quite influenced by Sabbath. I think they covered Black Sabbath on one of the earlier albums.
Yeah, the first album was actually with a different lineup apart from 2 of the members, and that was only covers.
Okay,
album.
Cool.
I'll talk more about that later if you like.
So, but you know, irrespective of that, I think that they have kind of carved out their own sound here, and
100%.
it's always so cool to hear something from an era, like I've said multiple times before in the past, that is largely unexplored to me, but just presents something so ahead of its time that really shouldn't exist.
So this is like, it's a 71 release. The band formed in 67, and they were basically originally like a side project by Yuya Uchida, because he went to visit his friend John Lennon in England in the mid 1960s, and Lennon he introduced him to like Hendrix, Cream, all these 70s guys. So Yuya wanted to kind of bring that back to Japan, so he formed, like, I think it was just called Flower maybe at the beginning. I can't remember. Terrible. Yeah, it was called Flowers as a cover band. So that first album with the Sabbath and all that, it was quite controversial because inside the LP they were all naked, and there was a female member of the band. They're all just completely front bottom, back bottom. I'm not sure which naked.
Channeling inner Ash Mehdi from Malakesh.
I forgot about that. It's a nice hot day as well, so it's really a vivid image. So yeah, that's the first album. But then basically 2 of the members moved to the US, and Uchida, he kept the drummer, kicked the bassist, recruited 2 members, and then Satori was the fruition of that new lineup.
Yeah, that's cool. That's an interesting fact. Because, I remember we were talking about the whole John Lennon connection before as well. Interesting fact I found out was, so they were, I think, struck up a friendship with the Canadian band Lighthouse.
Oh, I know about this, yeah.
And do you know who was in Lighthouse for a period?
Who?
Howard Shore.
No,
the composer of
I
the
didn't
Lord of the
know
Rings
that.
and the Hobbit music.
That is crazy.
So I had no idea he was in a rock band, and he was there for a few years, and would have been in there around about the time they met, I believe.
That is so
Not
cool.
sure.
The reason they wrote Satori was because they were going to go on tour with Lighthouse in Canada, so that's why they wrote the album.
Yeah, I remember, because they said they wanted some material to bring to the, And I'll tell you what, I mean, for an album that was written just purely just to have something to bring, it's a pretty solid album.
I will tell you a cool thing that really makes this band even cooler for me. This is like part of why I love sometimes covering albums that I've loved for a while, because I find out new things. But basically, I think it's not Shinobu. So one of the members who very helpfully, I didn't copy the name of in this excerpt of notes I've done. Let me try and remember who it is. I think it's. Sorry, hang on. It's one of the members is called Joe, right?
Yeah, it's Joe Yamanaka, the vocalist.
All right, so this guy, he was born in a brothel, in a Japanese brothel, and his father was a U.S. Army soldier of Caribbean descent. I think he thinks he might be Cuban, but basically he never really met his biological father. So he says he comes from a poor family in ruined Yokohama. So he was born like in this really difficult situation. So he grew up in an orphanage, after his mother and stepfather died, which is really sad. But then he met one of the members that ended up being part of Flower Travellin Band, and they both became kickboxers. And this is like way before they formed, they were part of the band. So they became kickboxers in their teenage years, and they also both became actors. And his friend is the producer of Satori, and they both became really well-known Japanese actors and were like the tough guys of Japanese cinema.
Oh, no way.
And they had they actually co-starred in a film that was released in 2001, which is a Japanese Yakuza film, and Satori is the whole soundtrack.
Yes, okay, shit. So that's why they done the soundtrack for that film.
Yeah, that's the reason.
I remember reading that it was used as yeah.
Yeah, so Joe and the producer, they both star in this film. And yeah, like it seems like they've got this like amazing friendship, and Joe also did a lot of like charity work because of his like background growing up in poverty. He died of cancer, I believe, and his house burned down like the year before, which is really disappointing and sad for that guy. But
so a man who he had his fair share of hardships.
he had a very colorful life, by the sounds of it. So yeah, basically him and the friend that became the producer, they were in a different band, and they were recruited by, I think it's Uchida. I've already probably forgotten the name of the main guy. He recruited them to be part of Flower Travellin Band when he was making that new lineup to do Satori.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was really fascinating.
Yeah, and the name of that film is Deadly Outlaw.
It is.
For anybody that want to watch it.
Hell yeah.
I had. Do you know the actor? I can't remember his nickname was Beat Takeshi. So the guy he's like the figurehead of the whole Takeshi's Castle program.
Oh yeah.
So like he's an actor that also starred in quite a lot of like I think they call it like they call it Z movies in Japan. I think, could be wrong on that.
Okay.
But it's like a type of like an action style film, and he was really a real prevalent actor during that time. He's also in Battle Royale as the head teacher of the first one.
Oh.
So, but he's a cool actor.
Apparently, sorry, go ahead.
Takeshi Kitano, yeah, that's his name. Sorry, yeah, Shem just gave me a very helpful prompt there.
Thank you,
Trying
Shem.
to style it out, but I didn't style it out very well. But but I'd done some work experience at the ICA Art Gallery, which is on the Strand, and he was coming to visit at the time to do some promotion.
That's so cool.
So I got 2 signed VCRs from him.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, which is quite cool.
Do you still have them?
No. No, they're lost.
Sorry. That's really funny. I was just reading more of my notes, and so Joe, his like ring name was Akira, and he ended up nearly killing a man. Apparently he got in like loads of fights as a teenager, and got into a fight where it was so bad he almost killed someone. The police arrested him and apparently led him to an epiphany where he said violence leads to nothing, and then he kind of calmed down by the sounds of it. So, damn.
See, it's quite cool because really, like, I was doing a bit of research about even the name Satori, and it's kind of like means kind of like enlightenment, right? And it's a real kind of Zen Buddhist principle. So it's interesting that people who are so, proficient at something like kickboxing.
Yeah.
But then that's true of a lot of people in martial arts, right? You kind of need to be
Calm.
quite centered and calm to be able to, use that skill wisely.
It's the most important thing in fighting is not to panic and to be calm. And it's also kind of terrifying if you're fighting someone that's calm as well, because it looks kind of, if you're on the other end and you're not calm, it's like, oh my god, they're psychopathic. Like they have no emotion, and then you're much more effective. You can make decisions much better if you're calm.
So what's your kind of take on the music on this album? You got any particular favorite tracks or?
To me, the whole album is like one track. I love the way the album starts with that scream.
Yeah.
Like it starts with this like naked kind of guitar sound that's like really raw, and it's like this evil, intimidating riff. It's like marching on. It does sound kind of Sabbath-y, but it's not. It's kind of like there's more space around the riff, but not much else going on. And then like the singer just screams. He's like losing his mind, kind of scream that like stretches on for longer than you would expect, and then you're like fully immersed. Like from that point, you're like jacked in to the matrix of this album, and it just takes you on this like journey through time and space. It really is that. Like each song is just like Satori 1, Satori 2, Satori 3. It keeps going. And they all have kind of different flavors, but generally there's this incredible use of energy, which I always say, I sound like such a woo-woo enlightenment person, but the energy flow is really good. It's always raw, it's always energetic. And I was reading the vocalist said that he intentionally drew back, didn't write lyrics for this because he wanted it to sound more like improvised and like free. And he felt like, I think when they performed it, they would improvise a little bit, and he wanted it to be as flexible as possible. So he didn't want to like tie stuff down by like having set lyrics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I reckon that definitely comes across really vividly in the last track, so Satori 5, because that is like, that sounds more like an improvisation, and even like the vocal work is just, kind of, just wailings and
Wailings.
ululations. So no, it was one thing that took me by surprise is how crystal clear the rhythm section is here. Like you can actually, there's certain parts of the track, I think it might be the second one I've got listed down, where like it's just, you can actually hear like the resonance of the instruments. Just like, wow, it's just so crazy that could be captured at this particular time as well. And I think it's a real kind of like, goes back to the whole argument about, what records sound better, digital or analog. So I was trying to say Digimon there for a second, which is better than Pokemon, by the way. I'll die on that sword.
Digimon is just Pokemon wearing jeans.
Yeah. Well, one, they could talk, and two, not all of them are named Nina. So,
Ninamon.
But I'm referring to the anime, by the way. I think
I like the anime.
The Digimon anime was far superior to the Pokemon anime.
It's less dark, that's for sure.
But no, like I think, and the guitars are, like I said before, they're really quite high in the mix. But like there's some interesting like dual work on there as well. I think it's. I remember reading that they're quite influenced by a lot of traditional Indian music, and it definitely has. I can hear that sort of flavor in it combined with the more Western sensibilities of the rock bands around that time. And then also, obviously, there is a distinctly Japanese sound to the music at times as well. So a good eclectic blend of sounds, which I think far belies everything else that was around at that time. Well, maybe it doesn't, because apparently there was all these amazing fucking bands in the 70s that I've never heard of before. So
I think Satori, I mean, this album is considered one of like an iconic, like, not that many people know about it. The people who do, I think, consider this like one of the proto-metal albums of the time. Interestingly, you say about Indian music. So Hideki Ishima, the guitarist, he's actually a sitar player. He's been playing for 40 years. And he now exclusively plays sitar. And he invented an instrument in 2000 that combines aspects of the sitar with the electric guitar, and Ackerfeld has cited him as an influence.
Oh, no, wait, that's cool.
And there's a picture of him playing this like cool sitar guitar thing, and it's fucking mental.
I need to check that out.
The neck
Sounds cool.
is like super wide, and it's like, obviously the whole thing is made of solid wood. It looks really heavy, but it just looks beautiful. It's not like a genty. This is before gent as well. Yeah. This is 2000. So this is before
proto-gent.
Proto-gent. Yeah, hell yeah. So it's just really cool that he's like grown into this like pro sitar player, and he's got this interest. He studied with the student of a really famous Indian teacher, and he spent like a day with the Indian teacher, and then became a student of his like Japanese like emissary, like his Japanese student teacher of the master, if that makes sense. Yeah. There's like a hierarchy. The album was also recorded in a single day and then mixed in a single day.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of got a bit of a raw vibe about it, so I can see that. It's still massively impressive, but yeah, that's cool. And even the name is strange. I think me and Shem were saying, Shem was saying before, just how it's, you wouldn't expect a band called Flower Travellin Band to sound like this.
It sounds really so evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shem messaged me and he just said that the sitar guitar is called a sitala.
Oh, there you go.
It's very cute.
That's cool.
I like that. And yeah, I mean, it's just like an evil sounding album, but also bright and happy and psychedelic. It's like dark psychedelia almost. Yeah. Yeah.
It's and I think that I quite liked the track 4, because I felt like that was like a bit more of a, I wouldn't call it an attempt, but more of an homage to the rock that was more, or the rock music that was more prevalent to that time. Like that felt a bit more like up tempo and happy, dare I say.
Yeah.
Whereas there's certain parts of this album that really are quite menacing and brooding, and has a real kind of like foreboding atmosphere. So I think they cover quite a good gamut of sort of dynamics and tones on this album.
Definitely. I think it's really impressive. The vocals also, the singer has a 3-octave range. And you can, like, his belting on the high notes is really good.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, the range is unbelievable. Like I was saying, it really reminds me of Gillan from Deep Purple at times, especially if you listen to a song like sort of, what's it called? Child in Time.
It could be like Satori too.
The classic Deep Purple anti-war song, but that's really got like some proper. It reminds me of that almost like hysterical,
like the
super
Highway
high-pitched.
Star as well, and he's like hitting those high notes. Yeah.
But just overall, just another great gem and surprise from this decade of
hell yeah
debauchery.
I'm gonna turn you into a low-key crypto 70s rock fan.
I can't come with a denim jacket, fucking. Some big fucking aviator glasses. Are they even 70s? I don't even know.
I think they're 80s.
That's how much I know about the 70s.
70s is like flares and those like really long collar tips.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you like it. This is like, again, I always say this is one of my favorite albums, because it is. I have a lot of favorite albums. It's bloody good. Check it out if you're interested in hearing what metal was like before metal, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's what stuff like that really always piques my interest, because I love hearing stuff that influenced the things that I grew up with.
It's a piece of history. I mean, it's influenced Opeth.
Yeah.
This whole album, so I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's funny how it took Opeth a while to kind of embrace their like 70s kind of proggy sort of influences, but I think later Opeth is great.
I like both old Peth and new Peth.
Yeah. Upeth.
New Peth. That sounds like a black metal like musician, new Peth. It could be a potential opening for your black metal band, New Peth.
Yeah, it could be.
It could be a stage name. I don't know.
I might just do a solo project of it and just write exclusively about the Digimon anime series.
I mean, the fact that Digimon wear jeans implies there's like a Digimon store where you go and browse for Digimon clothing.
Which ones wear jeans? Because I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure some of them wear jeans.
Okay, I'm trying to remember. I mean,
we both look at Shem. Can you Google it? Bring that shit up.
I guarantee you that is the first time that has been searched in the history of Google. Which Digimon wear jeans?
I saw like a dumb meme the other day, which is why I said this is like a picture of a gold duck wearing jeans. It's like on the weekends, gold duck like has a second job as a Digimon, and it's just him like wearing some jeans. But yeah, I don't know why we're talking so much about Digimon today.
Yeah, no, that was my fault.
No, of course not.
But it's, and it's like, I'll say something which I've said before when we've reviewed albums from this period, and that's, I think there's so much love given to, like, a select few bands from that time. Mm. Like, and obviously there's some moments on here, like, in particularly the fourth track has got a really, like, Zeppelin-esque rhythm section. Yeah. And, like, everyone knows Sabbath, Zeppelin, and a lot of the other sort of fucking really prominent bands at that time, so it just shows once again that, like, had the internet been around in its fully fledged form at this time, do you reckon maybe some of these bands might have been more well known than they are? I mean, you mentioned this band's like a cult band, so obviously a lot of people know of them, right? But like the fact that they're not a common name band.
I think if they were in America, they would have been a lot more popular, and they didn't get the opportunity to do that much more music after this.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. If they had like an oeuvre of work, is that how I say it? Oeuvre of work, then like perhaps they would have been a lot bigger. I think sometimes it's really a toss of the dice. It's like the PR you had, the manager you had, the label you were on, and I think Japanese music wasn't like something that was on the world market in the same way back then.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Because to be honest, I mean, kind of the UK and the US scene kind of just dominated the charts and most Western music scenes for the longest period of time.
Yeah, I don't know how. Maybe it's like a post-war thing. I don't know if I'm just making that shit up, but maybe people wouldn't have been as receptive to music from that part of the world in the same way. Because there's a lot of like horrendous racism towards Japanese people for a really long time in the US.
Oh yeah.
And obviously there still is, but it was like particularly bad in the 20th century. So perhaps that was maybe part of it. I will also say, though, Yoko Ono actually introduced her son, Sean Lennon, to Satori, who covered it in their 2017 EP, Lime and Limpid Green. So Sean Lennon and Les Claypool covered Satori Part 1.
Yeah. I was still so shocked that they had a thing together. I had no idea Sean Lennon and Les Claypool, when I pronounced his name right that time, had a project together.
It's very strange. It's weird that, was it Uchida? I mean, I should really take the time to actually say the names of the musicians properly. Great. I need to really get better at making notes. Jesus Christ, Nina Saeidi. Yuya Uchida. The fact he was friends with John Lennon. I'm so curious as to how you make friends with John Lennon in the 70s if you're in Japan.
Well, just don't be his wife. Sorry, might want to cut that part.
No, I think that's a 10 out of 10. I think that's a very good point.
That's common knowledge. Everyone knows that.
Everyone knows. He should definitely be called out about that shit.
Yeah. Plus, he's dead anyway, so you know what I mean. So he's not
you
going to
can't fight
contest
back.
it. No.
No. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Satori, Flower Travellin Band, go check them out. Even if you're not into metal, you'll like them. If you're into metal, you probably will like them.
Yeah, I can't see how anybody who's into classic metal wouldn't be into this band. And the album ends with like a nice gong hit, which I thought was kind of cool.
Everyone loves a gong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've met so many bands that get really excited when they get a gong. It's like the pinnacle of a band being complete is when you've got the gong.
Yeah, it's. I remember I had to go pick up a gun. Wow. Had to pick up a gong for. I was trying to say gong for my mum. I say gong for my mom, but and it was fucking massive, and I didn't drive, so I had to carry it back.
That's so
it
heavy.
Was. But it's cool. She was just obsessed. She was absolutely adamant she wanted a gong because it just sounds so fucking epic.
I know two bands that have got gongs, and each time they had to like haul ass to get the gong onto stage, and like they had to like get trains into London with their gongs, and they're like really big gongs. And this is two separate bands. Each time they did their set, I was there. After all, like, did you hear the gong? And I had to be like, yeah. You can't hear the gong. You cannot hear the gong. It was at the Dev. One of the shows was at the Dev. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to hear that gong.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, bless them. So I think maybe that's something you should say for when you're playing like a bigger stage with a better sound setup. I don't know. Yeah.
Plus, I mean, was there even any room for the banjo with the gong being there?
You've got to get like a special stand for it,
yeah.
And it's got to be in a particular place near the drummer. It's like, and also depending on where you are, like when we played a show once where all three, us and two other bands had to have all our gear on the stage at the same time.
Yeah.
And because we were the opener, all the gear, there was like 3 bands worth of gear. Like between sets, you'd take one set off, so the headliner only had one set of gear. So there were 3 drum kits on stage. Yeah. Which meant that the moment you played anything, everything started resonating.
Yeah.
Like all the cymbals resonated, the fucking kick drums resonated. So like you couldn't hear anything because everything was just going the whole time.
Yeah.
It was intense.
You should do ASMR of like drum sounds. There we go.
Jazz ASMR.
I was thinking I've got some, sorry, this is going to be relevant, I promise. But I've got some holes with me, you know, the cough sweets.
Of course.
Because hay fever.
You love cough sweets.
Anyone in London at the moment or the southeast of England at this moment in time who have hay fever, again, absolutely fucking punished at the moment.
Yes, they
the
are.
pollen count is ridiculously high at the moment. And I was going to pop one in. May sound like it's drugs or something. Yeah.
It sounds like a pessary or something.
Yeah.
So you
to my mouth.
one in.
I was going to pop one in to my mouth just before we started. And I remembered one of the golden rules of, I think, podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
Is don't have anything. Okay, this could sound weird because don't have anything in your mouth during recording, but don't. Because no one wants to hear someone sloshing some shit around their mouth.
Sloshing is the word of the day.
Oh God.
Yeah, we just heard like mouse smacking sounds throughout the whole.
Oh, it's the worst. That is, in my opinion, one of the worst sounds on the planet. With nails on the chalkboard, forks on the plate, snakes on the plane. Sorry, forks on the plate, and fucking mouth smacking and lip smacking. It drives me up the wall. I have to leave the room. So, I almost I can't even talk anymore. I'm so wound up at the thought of sounds that annoy me. But yeah, I almost committed my own cardinal sin.
You almost sloshed your way for the whole podcast.
Yes,
slosh. Shall we go on to 1914, The Blind Leading the Blind, out in 2018? You go first.
Right, so this is a band I've been following since their first album, The Eschatology of War. They are from Lviv, Ukraine. I believe that is the way it's pronounced, as Google instructed me. And I'm not going to read out the full titles of the band members because of what they've done on their Metallum, which is quite cool and in keeping with the gimmick of the band. I mean, gimmick in a wrestling sense, not in the derogatory sense. Is they've got like their regiment name and the division that they serve, so it's kind of like a bit of theatre there.
Should I give an example for the?
Go for it, yeah.
I actually love that they've done this. So
it's really cool.
On Metal Archives, for example, the guitarist is listed as 5th Division Ulanen Regiment Number 3 Sergeanten Vitalis Winkelhock, and there's literally like way more members with names like that.
Yeah, and basically there's no way I was ever going to say that without fucking up 50% of those words. So I've just taken the names, which I presume are also fictional names, or the stage names of the bands. You've got Armin von Heinessen on bass, Liam Fesson on guitars, Dietmar Kummerberg on vocals, and Rusty Potoplact on drums.
That's an amazing name. It sounds like a kind of bacteria.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Just talking a little bit about the progression from the first album to this one. It's a far more mature album in terms of the songwriting and the atmosphere. Like it's definitely a continuation of the sound that was present on Eschatology of War, but I think just a much more refined sense of maturity. And there was actually one track on the first album before we start talking about this album called Battlefield, which was is one of the most claustrophobic, doomy, deathy songs I've ever heard.
That's so cool.
And it's got and I think that's like a theme on this album as well. They do such a good job of conveying the futility of war, and they're like, I in my opinion, they're the antithesis to Sabaton.
Oh my god, I was literally thinking they're like what Sabaton wish they could be like.
Yeah, I mean, Sabaton make war sound like a Disney film. These guys make war sound like
actually war. Yeah.
And but yeah, so it's a real continuation from the first album, except it just flows much better than the first album. The production is far better as well.
Yes.
Produced by Olgerd from Kroda, another Ukrainian band. And there's also guest vocals from Dave Ingram of Benediction.
Oh, no way.
Which I think, from what I can tell, was the track Passion Hell. Because there was a bit of it that sounded a bit kind of boat thrower-esque. And Dave Ingram, Barney Greenway, and Carl Willits have all got that similar kind of
the exploited
death
cover
metal,
kind of reminded me of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine.
I got excited because I knew something about the music. But I like the exploited cover because normally I don't really like punk very much. But...
Yeah, well, the cool thing, I'll speak a little bit about the Exploited. The cool thing about them is, well, one of the few kind of like high-profile Scottish bands anyway. Obviously, my mum and dad
didn't know they were Scottish.
They are from Edinburgh, Scotland. Okay. And they are one of the bands, punk bands anyway, most known for really incorporating more of a thrashy, hybrid sort of sound. So the Exploited have, in a similar way that the Flower Travellin Band is, a proto-metal band, much in the same way the Exploited can be described in some ways as a proto-extreme metal band, because there's a lot of elements of their sound that are quite crusty that would influence a lot of grindcore bands and the hardcore bands. Yeah, it's super, super fast. Like if you listen to the original Beat the Bastards song,
I'm not.
It's faster than this version. So
damn.
So 1914 have basically taken it and just added their kind of like doomy death metal stamp.
I assume that they'd done that. Yeah.
Onto it, but it's still a relatively faithful cover. But like the original version is as energetic and as frenetic.
Nice.
So
that is really cool.
But yes, so I love this album. It was recommended by my friend Aaron.
Shout out to Aaron.
recommended it on YouTube, and I've been a fan of this band for quite a while, and annoyingly they were scheduled to perform live, I think March this year, before obviously everything happened again, so hopefully they'll get around to tour in London again at some point.
We'll definitely go. They're more than anyone who's watching from 1914. Come on the podcast, we'll do your cards for you. We'd love to hang out.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So there's a lot I can say about the music. So I think what I'll do for the time being is I'd be quite intrigued to get your take on what you personally thought of this album. I
have my own kind of personal connection to 1914 in a way. So very, very wonderfully, Dimitro from 1914 actually ended up liking our band, Lowen, which was really surprising because I wasn't expecting a band as like high profile as this and also badass as this to like our music. And I was like, maybe I'll check out this band, because I have usually when I see a band with a year in the name, I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure if this is going to be what's going to happen. And if it's about war, I'm usually like, that's also probably going to end in me being disappointed about like the political views of the band. However, 1914, really fucking cool. Like they're in no way fash, quite the opposite. As you say, they're not glorifying war, which is like the first no-no for me. If people are glorifying it, that is. So I really like that. I feel like they're very close to the subject matter, and I have a lot of thoughts really. Politically, I like it, which helps me actually listen to the music properly, if that makes sense. Because normally I would probably distance myself from like really enjoying music like this, if that makes sense. I'd just be like, oh no, what if they hate brown people, you know? But they don't, and they're kind of showing, as you say, the futility of war, which is something that I really think is a lot more metal, is a lot darker, is a lot truer than a lot of representations like the Sabaton representation. This is kind of like a darker bolt thrower in a way for me, and the drums kind of remind me of bolt thrower at times, and I really love how they've produced the kick drum, because sometimes it actually sounds like airplane propellers, and then other times it sounds like gunfire.
Yeah,
and they've got
100%.
like different tones on like different parts of the drums that are really crisp and also like really beautifully, like you can hear the differentiation between every stroke, which in music this heavy and like thick is really impressive, and it holds together like these marching, horrifyingly intimidating guitars as they like trudge towards you, and you literally do feel like it's a battlefield. And it's like somehow it's like not samey all the way through. It's like there's a lot of differentiation, there's a lot of tempo changes, a lot of really like good use of the double kick, which is some bands will just do it the whole time and it gets really boring and you stop hearing it, but they bring it in and out really well. And the same with the samples as well. I think they make really good use of samples, because normally I find them really boring, but they like properly add to the atmosphere of horror and like bodies being torn apart, and then the different explorations of like the psychologies of war. Like you've got what is it? Was it Stostrup? I think, or Stostrup. I can't pronounce it. I'm so sorry. Where it's like the shock troops you were saying, and yep. I think it's that song where they're talking about how like I'm not an evil man, but I love to kill. It's such a like brutal lyric to me, and they're talking about like they want to get more skulls and kill more people. And then my favorite was Hanging on the Old Barbed Wire, because it's like a top-down exploration of corruption in the army until you get to the sergeant. Like the first verse is, if you want to find the general, I know where he is. He's pinning another medal on his chest. I saw him pinning another medal on his chest. And it goes down to like the corporal, and he's like getting drunk on company rum. And then it goes all the way down to, if you want to find the private, I know where he is. He's hanging on the old barbed wire. I saw him hanging on the old barbed wire.
Well, I mean, if there is there, oh wow, I'm bad at going. God damn. I don't think there is a more perfect kind of description of what is the most fucked up aspect of war than that. Yeah. It's all about sending young people to their death while the rich are protected. And like usually sometimes people don't even know what they're fighting for. In the Meurs are Gone, I really like that one, because literally it's kind of, a lot of it is like first person perspective, but also very introspective, as if like your granddad's got drunk at the table after dinner and starts talking about war stories, which is something that would happen in my house. Like I had
I had family members who were like guerrilla fighters in Kurdistan, and then like when they'd start drinking, they would start telling the most insane stories, and it was kind of similar. Like you know, stories. There was one where my family member was like walking in the mountains, and like you'd walk for days.
Yeah, a loud siren.
Uh-oh, they heard me. You'd be walking for days, like trying to hide from the army, basically. And because he hadn't slept in 3 days, he fell asleep while he was walking, and he woke up in a puddle of water, and he'd lost all the other people that he was walking with. So he was lost alone in the mountains. There were enemy fighters like anywhere around the corner, and he's like wandering in the wilderness in Kurdistan, trying to find his people, and he found them after a few days. But like some of the stuff was like really dark and really interesting, and I'd be like a kid and I'd just be like, what the fuck, you know? So it reminds me of that. And this one is like it feels like he's basically saying, what are we fighting for? Don't mess with the war, which I really like. You know, it's like no one really knows what they're fighting for. What you're fighting for isn't even like freedom. It's just politics. It's just resources. It's nothing. No one cares about the people who are actually in danger in war, it feels.
I think those are the last lyrics on the track as well, right? That's
yeah.
It's do you know? I think you hit a lot of the nails on the head there, and it's very well said. And I think the thing I really like about 1914 is that everything is so well placed, and there's no wasted motion. From the samples to, like you said, the drums. And it's like when you're reading the lyrics along to the music, and I think this is something a lot of bands don't do or think about too much, but the music is reflecting what the lyrics are currently talking about.
So like the other way around.
So there's like a track, it is, I'm just scrolling down because I have made a shit ton of notes. It's C'est mon dernier pigeon.
It's my last pigeon.
Yep, and which is a reference to the homing pigeons that we used to send messages. And
it blows my mind that pigeons are so good at doing that.
Yeah, my nan's neighbour had a lot of pigeons, and they were like, I think they probably were the similar breed that would be the homing pigeons.
That's so cool.
They're just mad smart, and they're just great at finding shit. But it was, so there's, in that track, let's make sure this is the right track. Yeah, it is. So basically, there's, because this band, they do such a good job of melding different subgenres of extreme metal. It's very doomy and kind of emotive guitar leads at parts. And then there's a fair amount of black metal and death metal in there as well. And, this track here, there's a doomy passage where they're talking about kind of, gearing up for the last attack and kind of recovering their strength. And then basically the last paragraph is basically about loading a cannon and shooting it, and it splatters blood all over the walls. And that's when the music transitions into the furious double bass work and just the absolutely frenetic, like, sort of extreme metal riffing. And that's what I mean about, like, everything's so well placed. They've obviously thought about how the music is reflective of the lyrics, and the lyrics are delivered in a way, like, I really like his style.
Oh, the vocals are so good.
Like, so vitriolic and snarled, and, like, there's a lot of, like, it sounds like there's a lot of dual layering effects going on, similar to what Glenn Benton from Deicide does, where he kind of misses.
It's really wide.
Yeah, and I think that's combined with mixing the highs and the lows with the mids, with the mid, like, sort of pitched screaming being more prominent, because it creates that kind of full sound. But he's done it to really good effect, and it's got, like, an element, like, obviously the lyrics are done, like I said, from a first person perspective, and it does come across like a narration a lot of the time. And I think the vocals serve a really good purpose, and it's such a cool component of the music, because it's just able to kind of portray that message in a way, and that's because the vocals are decipherable as well. You can hear what he's saying, which is quite important if you are wanting to put a message across, because most death metal vocals and even black metal vocals are pretty much more or less impossible to hear any enunciation whatsoever. So I think it really lends to the band's overall sound and atmosphere that they're done in the style that they're done.
It's a really good performance, not only because, like, the enunciation's really good, but, like, the emotion is there too, which is quite
100%.
rare, I feel, in this kind of vocal delivery. It reminds me of Carl's bolt thrower like style of like spitting out, like snarling.
Yeah.
But the mixing is like, I kind of want to hear bolt thrower mixed this way, if that makes sense, because I think it would sound incredible. Because like the vocals really do sound demonic, but not demonic because they're inhuman, but demonic because they're so human. Because it like, it's a part of war which people try to ignore. Like, you know, the people enjoying killing, people getting torn apart, and like the futility and emptiness of the whole act, which is like, it's just silly that we do it, you know? And he's like exploring that through the lens of human evil, which is really, and human misery and destruction too, which is really interesting.
Yeah, there's you're 100% right. There's just a great vocal passage that I really thought, and this goes back to what I was saying about No Wasted Motion, where there's a line in Passion Hell, which is the name is kind of like a pun of the Battle of Passchendaele, which was got written down somewhere. I'll get into that a bit later. But no, there's a lyric where basically it's because most of the vocals are like kind of your typical, there's a lot of distortion being used, but there's like this absolutely frenzied scream, and it is, "We shall move out of our holes like worms in the earth."
Oh.
But it's like screamed over and over again, but it's as if it's screamed as if someone that is actually caught up in a battle.
It. Yeah. It's like really present a lot of the time, and then sometimes it's suddenly really introspective and psychological.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like disturbing, but effective.
And you know, and talking of the lyrical sort of subject matter, they're covering a lot of historical events. So obviously, the first track, "Arrival," the Moose Are Gone, was one of the battles in the 100-day offensive,
which is also the last track. No,
that was the first track.
The last track is called the
my bad. Yeah, last track is called the 100-day offensive. And this particular offensive was the second deadliest US battle in history. And that was put down due to the inexperience of a lot of troops, which is quite prevalent in most armed forces around that time. And also Spanish flu was rife at the time.
Oh my God, so it's like having a war during COVID.
Yeah, so it was they had to deal with that on top of everything else that was going on.
I thought Spanish flu was like 1921 or 1919, but I guess it might have been before that too.
I think it started around about 1917 to 19, because I know my nan was alive towards the end of it.
Oh damn.
Yeah, so but yeah, definitely definitely mid-late 10s to the 20s, I think was around about time. But I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. Yeah, and then you got the track sort of A7 Fee Mephisto, which is basically talking about a tank. And apparently the only one ever recovered is now situated at the Queensland Museum in Brisbane.
No way. There's a lot of references to Australian troops, I think, was it that one or one of the other songs?
Yeah, because as far as I'm aware, because I've never been much of a historian, you know, especially about the World War Ones.
I'm not very good at the World Wars. No.
It's like when I felt like it was all we ever really learned about in school, and
oh my God, it was mostly World War II. We only really learned about World War One to talk about World War II for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and it's like, and the thing is, like everything in school, if it was taught in school, then I would automatically be inclined not to give a shit about it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because it's just so bad at teaching shit.
They would teach you like such propagandized history. They still do. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like they don't talk about like the Indian troops in the World Wars. They don't talk about like half of the shit that actually happened. It's always just like, England did this, Churchill was incredible and amazing, and we should all suck his dick because he's fantastic. I mean, that's basically what we learned at school.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And then I remember getting up to the Vietnam War, and they were trying to say that, oh, you know, there was a legitimate threat of communism coming, and the whole domino effect. Then I'm just like, nah,
I'm sure all those rice field workers were like really threatening.
Yeah, exactly. And they still fucking destroyed the US. So
I'm so fucking glad that they did, but at the same time, I'm sad that so many people had to die.
But one of my favorite tracks on the album is High Wood, 75 Acres of Hell.
Yeah.
Which is a cool track. That is detailing the 75 Acres of Hell, which was in an area called High Wood, which was a section of the Battle of the Somme, which I think still to this day is the most casualties ever recorded in a single battle, I think. So I remember going back almost 20 odd years when I was doing GCSE history.
I think Shem just giggled because you said Highwood. Oh, it was something else. He was okay. I'm glad it wasn't that. The timing was
But so basically that's talking about it's a battle where there was a legit 75 acres, which were referred to as like one of the worst places in the world and one of the most, because there was just so much bodies killed there. And I think the British eventually overwhelmed the Germans near that area, but the commander was relieved of duty due to the wanton waste of men on that particular battle or offensive, which is rich considering that every war is a wanton waste of men. So, but there you go. But no, yeah, the track itself is there's parts of it. It's one of the first tracks on the album that has a good combination of different flavors of atmosphere, because a lot of the album is generally quite depressing.
It's very depressing
and claustrophobic. I feel like it does such a good job of conveying that claustrophobic feeling of of war. Not like I've ever been in the war, but this is the first track on the album that I think adds in a slight feeling of something akin to sounding triumphant or a bit more anthemic, and not in the way that Sabaton does, but in a way that's kind of still tinged with an element of sadness and the fact that that there's such a grand loss of life happening. Same with the last track, 100, the 100-day offensive. I think that track also, it starts with like a beautiful like acoustic section. It's one of the longer tracks on the album. I think it's just over 10 minutes long, but that's got like it's a bit more of a slower pace, and it's got more of that kind of like more sort of beautiful melodies and guitar work. I mean, the whole album I think is beautiful, but like it's more classically beautiful as opposed to some of the oppressive and overly somber melodies of most of the tracks on this album.
I really like that this album is actually respectful whilst also criticizing like the horrors of war. Like I think a lot of people take it personally when someone's like, war is bad. They're like, oh, but my brother, my son, my father was a veteran. Whereas this whole album is kind of like a tribute to those who have been victims of like the dogma and propaganda and the horrors of like the bureaucratic grinding wheel that smashes those who are like working class, lower class, the people at the bottom of the rungs. The military is essentially like this weird kind of fucking class thing.
Yeah,
like if you're important, fucking not actually, but if you're deemed important, you don't have to fight. You're just given a title and you get a salary, and then you choose who goes to die.
Yeah, which
is, I feel it's like kind of the same still now. But yeah, there's an element of respect and an element of kind of like really actually looking at what happened.
Yeah,
I remember reading a kind of like an essay, I guess, about how a lot of people who venerate war, who are like really into like glorifying the troops, a lot of the time, if a family member or if people have died in war, you're more likely to compensate for the pain, for like the futility of the loss and the fact that they died for nothing, by just like really going into the whole like, of course they died protecting the country, like we have to look after our troops. And it's like, well, the troops aren't looked after. They come home and then they're forgotten about, and they died for nothing. And it's like, it's painful to think about how your family members were ripped away from you for like the games of some rich men who didn't have to lift a finger the whole time. And yeah, they died for nothing.
Yeah, I think literally what I was going to say next. I think it's just such a defense mechanism for so many people, because it's just too much to bear thinking that they literally did it for nothing and they were sent to die.
And then that if you defected, you were branded a coward and executed.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
And I think that's summed up perfectly by the lyrics on one of the last track, the 100-Day Offensive. There's a bit where he says, "Keep your head down, forget about honor, forget about pride, and crawl in the mud," which is what probably a lot of them did. When you're out there in war and shit hits the fan, then that's of course what you're going to do. That's the human response. You're not going to be. I mean, you might be that. Well, dare I say the word, brainwashed into believing that you're doing it for such a noble cause and you actually are fighting for your country. But like most people will just completely crumble and be completely overwhelmed by the horrific nature of the situation.
It's interesting because I listened to this almost immediately after finishing the Wheel of Time series, and the last book is 1,000 pages long and is about a single battle. So it's like 1,000 pages of war. It's called A Memory of Light. It's actually really good, and I believe Robert Jordan is a Vietnam vet, and you can tell from the descriptions of the battles, like there's a lot of like exploding ground, soil, people's limbs being blown off, like really horrific fucking like basically during the book they invent they start to invent guns, they start to invent cannons, they start to invent trains, but it's also like in a fantasy realm where people can like do magic and make stuff blow up. But then basically men are able to do magic in a particular way. Again, they're trained to do it, and they start blowing up people's heads on the battlefield en masse.
Yeah.
And there's like a battle where like they just massacre thousands and thousands of people who've never encountered like this kind of magic before, and their heads are just popping, and there's blood fucking showering everywhere, and you're like knee deep in blood, and then like the ground is exploding, and like people's limbs are flying in the air, and it's like, this is a fantasy novel.
I had no idea Wheel of Time was that fucking brutal.
It's so brutal.
Jesus Christ.
And this book is like 1,000 pages of like battle tactics and like people maneuvering, of like maps changing, like people's brains being invaded by like evil magic people. I don't want to put spoilers in. It's actually amazing, but at the same time it reminds me of this, because you can see the part of Robert Jordan is like war, heroism, amazing, glory, magic, and then the other parts that's like so-and-so's head just exploded.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, so-and-so's covered in blood, so-and-so doesn't have arms anymore. Like, and there's kind of like parallels to like nuclear, like, you know, there's a thing called balefire, which is like banned. If you cast balefire, you are destroying the very threads of reality, and it's literally, reality is made of actual threads. And if you keep doing it, the whole of reality will unravel and fall apart. Like everyone gets fucked over. That's like nuclear power, right? But the bad guys do use it, and then sometimes the good guys have to use it, and you're like, you can see the parallels between 20th century history in this like fantasy, whereas this is like, having finished that book and having like the shell shock of reading it, and then going into this, I was like,
it's intense.
It's really good. It's like it's really interesting to look at them both in parallel, because they're both like narratives of war, and they're both like explorations of the human reaction to war, and this is literal, and I just came from reading like a figurative version of that, but like a 15,000 page figurative version of that, if like you're thinking of the whole series, to this like 50-minute brutality that I experienced afterwards. It was really cool.
See, I always thought Wheel of Time was just so much more lighthearted, and only because Blind Guardian done a song about it, also called Wheel of Time. And I'm thinking, well, Blind Guardian are covering it. It's probably, you know, I mean, they're quite. I wouldn't call them Disney metal, which is the derogatory term saved for power metal bands, but they are quite lighthearted a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I would not have expected Wheel of Time to be as brutal as that.
There is some dark as fuck shit. There's also some like cool lighthearted shit. It starts off like really nice, like la 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 in a country town, and then suddenly everyone's like, slowly you're like, whoa, everyone's fucked. Everyone's gonna die. Like everyone's losing. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I'll jump on it at some point.
It's a labor of love to read the whole thing, but once you're into it, you won't want to stop.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to 1914, I just want to say, because obviously, like, these guys are nowhere near old enough to be in the war. They might have had some relatives that were there.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think I'm just impressed with how authentically they've managed to present it. Well, it appears authentic anyway, because I myself was not old enough to be in the First World War. If you could believe that.
I can believe it.
So, like, you know, I think they've done a better job than... Because, you know, I mean, like, war is such a common theme in metal, right? You got bands like Hail Bullets, Asphyx, Boat Thrower, Sodom, however the fuck you would pronounce it. I say Sodom. And, like, it's a common theme, right? But you can tell that... But those bands, and obviously Sabaton as well, they're not glorifying it per se, but they're kind of treating it in a way where it's just some subject matter that sounds cool.
I feel like they just wanted to pick something to write about. Not Bolt Thrower, it's a bit different, but like a lot of them, I'm just like, well, why'd you choose this?
Yeah.
What's your connect? Is it because your granddad fought in it? Okay, but like, Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it doesn't feel as sincere.
No, but this sounds like war. That's
Yeah.
basically what I'm getting at. Like, this sounds like what they're writing about. Whereas every other group, I mean, Hail Bullets have got some songs as well because they're quite a good at infusing that element of doom into their death metal sound as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think there's a sincerity here that I think is just something I haven't really heard before. And even in their previous album, I don't think it came through as much in 1914's first album. But I think they kind of really managed to like fucking catch the lightning in the bottle with this one.
For real. And their social media is also really good. They will post about like stuff to do with history. I was like browsing through it and I actually learned a bunch of stuff because, you know, I'm sure you can relate. In my experience at school, learning about war like was infuriating and disrespectful and full of lies. So I have really negative feelings towards like World War II in particular. World War I was just depressing as fuck because like trench warfare, people just got completely massacred fighting those wars, and you know, kids being conscripted and stuff. It's just usually learning about war makes me really sad. But I think this is good. I think this is an antidote to those people who maybe, I don't know if you had this, but in this country, I feel like there's like a really heavy drive to recruit young people to the army. Because I think once you're past a certain age, you're like, I'm not fucking doing that.
Yeah. I think there's a really heavy manipulation to try and acquire a certain demographic of person who'd be more susceptible to joining the army, and because they want those people to think that that's their only alternative now.
When I was at school, they would come every year and do like everyone would have a school trip. You'd go on this like fun obstacle course and they'd talk to you about insurance and like health insurance and how you're protecting your country. And I was never allowed to go. I was the only kid in my whole year who was not allowed, and I would get bullied for it. Even my teachers would look down on me. They were like, oh, they're foreign, they don't care about this country. It was kind of what I would hear. But I'm really glad I didn't go because they were being brainwashed. These kids would come back with like camo everything, these goodie bags with like an army pen, woo! And then like some of them would just join the army because they got some free shit and went on a cool obstacle course.
But you know, I could tell. I for one can see why people get want to join, because it's if you've grown up in an area where there isn't really a sense of community and you've lived a hard life and someone's promising that to you, then it's going to seem alluring, right? If someone's just like, this is like a brotherhood and
it's somewhere to have a structure, a family, a safety, ironically, kind of.
Yeah, but I think I said it once before. I can't remember when, but at some point in this podcast. But I'm so, and like even with the whole, and this is controversial, but fuck it. Like I'll never wear a fucking poppy.
Yeah,
and
I don't wear them.
And it's like, you know what I mean, like, because I feel like it's kind of been hijacked a bit by like the more recent wars, particularly the Iraq War. And I'm just like, don't get me wrong, like my granddad hated the fact that he was sent to war, and he didn't want his fucking medals. Right, and then on the other side of my family, there was a grandparent that never returned from the war, and so the mum had to raise the rest of the kids. So it's like,
and the people who came back, like they're not helped.
No,
it's just you give some money to the people selling the poppies. That money probably disappears into the pockets of some like rich ass army people who spend it recruiting more young people to send to wars to kill, and then like. No one talks about the people that were shot for being defectors or supposed cowards because they were having PTSD and shell shock, like genuine psychological problems. No one talks about the abuse that people experience in the army. No one talks about the racist and sexist abuse that people experience in the army. It's just, if you don't wear a poppy, you're disrespecting. I mean, surely you're disrespecting your country and your troops for not actually like tackling the horrors of war and ending war or looking after veterans,
Yeah, and it's 100%, and it's like I said, it's just I do honestly think for most people it's a defense mechanism because I reckon it's too much to bear for them to think that it was for nothing.
Yeah, I can understand that. I really can,
and I can, and obviously I feel sorrow more than anything for the people that were sent out there, and and I don't think that. Obviously none of them deserved to die, and there's an element of respect towards them in the sense that, that they were drafted into something that was part of this massive fucking world scheme just to reboost the economy, because to be honest, that's what it was all about. It was just like countries wanted to make money again, and war is the best way to do it. Yeah. I
mean, just going to war, the simple act is a very, very it brings in a lot of money for countries. Like, you know, the US, the majority of army stuff is made through prison labor. You know, the same here. I mean, like, a lot of that stuff is bought, manufactured and sold, and, you know, the conflicts in the Middle East, like, those weapons come from here.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm not a fucking, like, I've never been that knowledgeable or well-versed in history, specifically wartime history. But that's why I'm glad an album like this exists, because I do feel like it's portraying a more, even though I myself am not too knowledgeable, I can tell that this is a more accurate portrayal of the shit that was happening, you know? You
can feel the truth in it.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if this is even relevant, but the most harrowing, upsetting thing I ever read about war was a contemporary biography I read for someone who's alive today who had to fight in the Iraq War. And he was conscripted, which in Iran is, like, still compulsory, with his best friend. And, like, within minutes of being on the battlefield, he saw his best friend's skull get crushed by tank tracks, and he saw his best friend's brain just get, you know, he just saw his brain get smeared across the tracks and the field, and he just stared at his lifelong childhood friend. Just
that's fucked.
That's it. Yeah, it's so upsetting. Like, and yeah, so, like, with that in mind, and then seeing the, like, kind of such, it feels so, like, forced and fake, the celebrations we have here for, like, only one of our wars, really. Only like the world wars, essentially. We don't talk about the other wars that we've done that we shouldn't have done.
No, exactly, and we had no right to be there.
No, absolutely not.
And no, and put it this way, like what you're talking about there is do you think the higher ups in the army have lost any sleep over that guy that had his brain smeared? No, they don't give a fuck. No, don't give a shit. But such is life. But this was a good album.
Thank you so much, 1914, for shedding truth and light and darkness on the barbarity of man. It was very effective. And
absolutely amazing guitar work. I felt like I haven't said anything about guitars on this album. The guitarist, I believe his stage name is Liam Fesson, but he is the one who writes 90% of the music, which I read in an interview. And I think that the music is, particularly the guitar work, is just absolutely unreal. And the riffs are great, and I've rarely heard a band do such a natural amalgamation of different kind of subgenres in a way that's totally fresh and unique.
Nice. Thank you, 1914. Shall we move on to the realm of fantasy?
Yes, let's do it.
Talk about Noctule.
So before we say anything, I talked about saying how I'm not very well versed in history and world wars. And I know fuck all about Skyrim.
Me too, so this review is going to be probably quite short.
So I've done some research about some of the things, and I bought Skyrim when it first came out. Because
no way.
Yeah, and played about like 20 minutes of it.
Kate would kill you. You know I broke Skyrim.
You broke it? What, in-game or...?
I played Skyrim. I was really excited to play Skyrim. I was playing at a friend's house, and I broke the first cutscene of the game because I died between areas, and the game just started glitching and looping. So you'd start in the wagon, and you get to the door, and I got burned by dragonfire. So I'm like, I just die the moment you're supposed to start the game. So it just kept defaulting. Like the meme, you just end up in the wagon again. It's like, no, it's a hell loop.
God. Sounds like some David Lynch-esque nightmare.
It was really upsetting.
Fantasy form.
And ever since that, I just had no interest at all in Skyrim or Elder Scrolls or anything.
The thing is, for me, it doesn't matter what I say about the game because it's one of the most popular games of all times. But like, when I found out just how much you had to grind to make progress in that game, and like, I am the most casual gamer.
I'm pretty casual
ever.
too, yeah.
Like, you know, I'm coming from the era of Sega Master Systems and NES games where you could complete a game in a day. And my dad even had a Commodore 64 and a Spectrum ZX. Might have been both or one of them. It was a long time ago, but I remember him playing them as well. And just some of those games were pretty cool. But like, that is the era of gaming that I kind of come from, where you know, like, this fucking. I mean, I was into PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 as well for a bit for certain games, but so it's just I've never been a big gamer. That was a very convoluted way to say that I'm not a gamer.
Not a gamer.
But so this album, Noctule, Wretched Abyss, released this year. is the solo project by Serena Cherry of the critically acclaimed sort of post-metal / hardcore outfit, Svalbard.
Indeed.
And I've always really wanted to go to Svalbard, the place, because that
Me
is one of the best
too.
places to see the Northern Lights.
Oh, and also because
apparently.
it's in Philip Pullman's Northern Lights as well. And I was like, oh, if I see a polar bear, it'd be so cool. I don't know why. Since I was a kid, I wanted to go.
Oh, that sounds cool. I didn't know it was in... I've not read Northern Lights, so...
That's where the bears live.
So it's... and this is... don't know about whether or not I'd call it a concept album, but the lyrics are almost exclusively about the realm of Skyrim and the world that inhabits that game, which is called... Did you look up the name of the world? I've researched it, but
I did not.
I've forgotten it.
So I didn't even do that. I read that each song is about a different dungeon. So we're both just like, yeah.
Well, let's talk a bit about the music. So
Okay.
this is cool because I feel like it's got some elements that are prevalent in Svalbard. So it's got like a lot of kind of a post-metal, sort of really like ethereal and like really nice melodic lead work. But obviously it's kind of packaged in a way that's much more rooted in the black metal sphere. Like I was saying, at times it kind of reminds me a bit of like Windeer and Tarka at times as well as sometimes even some mid-enslaved at certain points.
I can see why you'd say that. Some of the guitar work is very similar.
And it's the productions. I like the production because the guitars are quite high in the mix, and I'm a big guitar person. That's, to me, when I listen to music, that's always so about the riff, man. But like the leads are just soaring and super melodic through like 99.9% of this album. And I've, like I said, I've not played much Skyrim, but I would be amazed if this doesn't do a good job in conveying the beautiful landscape of the game.
I feel you. I think this is like the second Elder Scrolls kind of band that I've encountered. The first one was Moragtong, who are great. We'll have them on the podcast at some point. They're like a Doom version, and they do Morrowind, which I believe is an earlier iteration of the game.
Yeah, I think that was Morrowind was before because it was Skyrim and then Oblivion, then Morrowind.
Yeah,
Working back.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I really don't know. I'm like a Nintendo person, basically. I don't really have enough money to play anything else. So, like, I have free games on my Nintendo, and that's it. And my old 64 games, done. But this is cool, and it is making me, like, itch to perhaps explore this world at some point. I really like the introduction of the album, with the immediate screaming. I think that's a really cool way to start an album. Maybe I'm just saying that because I've done the same thing without the screaming, but I like it when it's just like that, and then it's just immediately the guitars just exploding, and the guitars are really unusual to my ears. Maybe I'm just imagining it, but they almost sound like 8-bit music. Am I just imagining that? But there's like this weird kind of chimey mid kind of thing going on at the top end of the guitar, but then like the bottom end is also there, and it's really confusing. It's like, wait, is this 8? Like, am I semi hallucinating an 8-bit track on top of all this stuff? Or is this some crazy guitar pedal that I've never heard of?
So yeah, I'm wondering if maybe that is like that thought is subliminally like influenced by the fact that that the lyrical subject matter is about a game.
Yeah, perhaps I'm just full of shit. Yeah.
But no, I agree, especially what you said about the vocals. And it's cool that we've got 2 albums that start off an album with a scream.
Yeah.
And I really like Serena's vocals on this album.
They're
I think
brilliant. 10 out of 10, Serena.
Yeah, it's like I'm a big fan of really intense, frenzied, shrill screams. And there's at times on the album, particularly the second track, Labyrinthian, which really reminds me of Bethlehem at times. You ever listen to much Bethlehem?
I've not.
They're a German, I wouldn't say black metal. They had their own genre called dark metal. And they had some of the most ridiculously emotional, high-pitched screams I've ever heard.
Wow.
And there's at times where the vocals are a bit reminiscent of that, which I thought was super cool. And I love that sort of... And even the way they're produced, like they're super like cavernous and kind of in the distance a little bit, like it's blended in quite well. And I think it just works so well with, like I said, the super melodic and kind of anthemic lead work.
I'm just going to correct myself. Every song isn't about a dungeon. Some of them are about dungeons. Some are also about storylines and weapons.
Yeah, well, I've got written in my notes that the last 2 tracks, Unrelenting Force and become ethereal. Actually, shouts. You can learn shouts in the game, which are a bit like spells.
Oh yeah,
I
you can
presume.
like kill dragons and stuff with them, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
these are both named after dragonborn shouts.
Ah.
And I think Unrelenting Force is the first shout that you learn as a member of the dragonborn race.
You know, there's a martial arts guy in Japan, there's like a karate guy who can kill birds by shouting at them.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's really... that really tickled Shem for some reason.
That is mad.
There's like a YouTube video of him like shouting, and it's like, wow, it's really loud. It's a bit scary. If you shouted at me, I'd probably cry.
That just reminds me of that video of that dude shouting at his cat. Do you remember? It's like, get the fuck down from there. And he's like, that's a classic video.
That reminds me of that video. There's this cat, and this guy's like, hey, moi, there's a weird cat out here. And this is like really ugly cat. He's like, it's so ugly, it looks like grandma.
I got some bad news. I think that's fake.
No,
Yeah.
the cat looks so weird.
Because that guy's voice in that video is, I think his name is Michael Rappaport, who was like
That's a strange name.
He is he was in some sitcom in like the mid 2000s. Can't remember the name of it.
Oh no,
but-
I'm so
yeah.
sad. I love that video.
But it's but I don't know what cat he was talking about. But apparently it was not that really ugly cat in the video.
I love
think
that
I
ugly cat.
could be chatting complete shit, but that's what I seem to
I
remember.
hope
about
you're
that video.
wrong, just because I love that video. What were we talking about? Shouting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is no one going to do the noise?
I don't know the noise.
They go, "Fuss round, da!"
Oh,
You don't
So-
know that?
we've never played
I've
Skyrim.
seen the videos of the scientists like shooting the...
Nah, man, I'm a fucking absolute noob when it comes to this shit, mate.
I know about karate people shouting at birds, but I don't know anything about this.
I know the arrow and the knee meme, which is from a previous Elder Scrolls game, right?
I know the meme of like the cart at the beginning, and like
Yeah.
like there's like a YouTube video and it fades, and it's just like the guy in the car. I
But
love
the
that.
thing is, like, the game is so long and fucking epic. I mean, it's been re-released, about 25 fucking times on
Has
about
it?
25 different consoles.
Oh.
And I know that there's a lot of, like, deep lore about this game. Like, it's got some of the best lore
It's
when
got
it
like the
comes
cat
to...
people, the Cadget has wares.
Oh, yeah,
that's
that
pretty
was
cute.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember there was some guy who would like refer to me as a Cadget. I'm like, is that just because I'm Asian? Like, why am I a Cadget? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they're...
they were doing an Asian.
In the game now, I think they're supposed to be like... released in
Oh, there you go. Well, okay, minor racism there. We'll let it pass. I did read that Wretched Abyss is a song about Hermaeus Mora, who is the Daedric Prince of Fate. I love the word. Is it Daedric or Daedric? He's a Prince of Fate, knowledge, and memory in Skyrim, and he often appears in a Lovecraftian form of tentacles in the game. This imagery, combined with his unsettling psychological questline, is what inspired Serena to write the song.
Oh, that's cool.
There you go.
It's actually one of the tracks I enjoyed the most on the album as well. It's there's parts of it that really remind me of there's a good Japanese band called Intestine Balism, which was covered recently by the podcast I've been enjoying a lot recently called the Heavy Hole Podcast.
Nice.
And they had Phil on from Phil's Metal Breakfast.
Shout out to Phil, total legend.
Love that guy, love his podcast as well. And they were doing a special on Intestine Balism, who are like a massively underappreciated melodic death metal band.
That's cool.
From Japan. But there's so many layers to them. There's elements of black metal in them. And they've got they are one of the bands, in my opinion, that do a really good job of combining elements of beauty to a guitar lead with also just that hint of sadness.
Ooh,
and
nice.
I think that there's parts of the guitar work on this track in particular that really remind me of, like, especially the second Intestine Balism album, Banquet in the Darkness. And yeah, I think she's done a really great job of putting everything together. She performed everything herself. Even there's some really cool drum work on some of the tracks. I think it's the second track has got some really cool cymbal work. And just just the way everything's composed, like as far as solo projects goes.
This is really good stuff for a solo project.
It's good shit. Like, because
For any project, yeah.
Because, like, so many times if someone's doing a solo project or something that's just like something just on the side before you focus on your main project, it's normally, you're just fucking about a bit and not really putting too much effort into it. But I feel like this is like an actual release. Like, it sounds like a proper album.
Yeah. I got to say, like, you got to go in about 5 minutes, I believe. So just giving you a shout out.
I've got time.
Yeah. All right. The cover is like very Tolkien-esque. Is it Alan Hall, the guy who does the art for the old Tolkien illustrations. It's
Oh,
Hall
Alan
something.
Moore's the guy that done V for Vendetta, and he's the.
That's Alan Moore, isn't it?
Oh, I thought you said Alan Moore. Who
I
did you
said
say?
Alan Hall.
I know who you're talking about, but if you said the name, I felt like it might.
I feel like he's got
but,
Hall in his name, but that could just be the guy drew loads of Halls.
I kind of know who you're talking about, but
Yeah,
the name is escaping me.
It's like, you know, the really old edition of like the illustrated Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Is that his name? Am I full of shit? Oh, okay, sorry. Shem is pulling that shit up.
This album artwork was done by some called Stephen Kingscote, and I also was quite fond of the album artwork. It was quite cool.
Yeah, it's got like a dragon. Alan Lee, fuck's sake. Oh, I got the Alan right.
Yeah.
He did do a lot of calls, to be fair. There's a lot of halls in his work.
I know what you mean, though. Like, it's got that same kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's got like these two beautiful, I think it's overarching trees and like the dragon like taking off in the middle and like mountains and a lake. It's really like high fantasy. I love it.
Yeah. And even the name Noctule, the only thing I could find on the name, which it probably means something in Skyrim as well, but it's actually the name of a really cute brown-skinned bat.
Oh.
And I'll show you a picture afterwards. It's super, super cute.
I love bats so much.
They're adorable. It's got a really cute, angry-looking face as well.
Oh, I love flying fox bats. They've got like the most adorable faces. And when they pee, like, okay, this is going to sound really weird, but bat genitalia is like horrifyingly human.
Yeah.
It's like, it's genuinely disturbing. It's just like a tiny dick and balls. And then like, it's really weird. And then when they wee, like, because they're hanging upside down, they like kind of upside down themselves so that their wee doesn't go all over their faces. So they like kind of do this weird like flipping motion so that they can wee everything. It's really strange. If you're ever bored, just go look it up.
Yeah, apologies to the FBI agent that monitors my phone when I search bat genitalia later on tonight.
Yeah.
But going back to the album, after that interesting segue,
Sorry.
there's a track I really like, also called Evenaar, which I believe that is a... well, it's also the Dutch word for equator, but it's a word in the dragon language meaning to extinguish something.
Nice.
And one thing I like that Serena's done on this album is on the title track, Wretched Abyss, it kind of ends with some really nice kind of like celestial sounding clean work, which is cool. And then this track even starts with that, and then it's kind of very nicely placed at certain points throughout the album. So it's not overused, but it's done in a way that I think accentuates the overall feel of the album quite well.
Nice. I think this is like, you know, really well curated, really obviously thought out piece of work. As you say, it's like, it's not just some casual thing that's been flung off on the side. It's like a really well done release. And it seems to have done really well on Bandcamp. Like 2 of the vinyls were sold out already. And like a ton of people have bought it. So it's like $7.99 on Bandcamp. You can go buy it right now. And there's, I think, some CDs and maybe a vinyl or 2 that's available.
Yeah, and just goes to show, you know, like we were having a work sort of related conversation earlier about how gaming and video games seem to be the new form of media that most people enjoy these days, right?
Yeah.
And I think this could be maybe even an example of how a gaming world or gaming legendarium could be as explored as, say, the works of someone like a Tolkien or dare I say it, a J.K. Rowling.
Ooh, Harry Potter black metal band.
There is one.
Oh.
It's I think they're called the Muggle Death Party or something like that.
That's so fucking lame.
And they got an album called The Seven Horcruxes and something like that, I think.
Do they spell it like WHORE and it's like grindcore or something?
I think it is like pretty much a blackened death metal album, I think.
Wow.
I think I did listen to them once but I think the person that's done it is fully aware that this is like a gimmicky
Turfy,
parody sort of thing. I don't think it's like a serious thing.
I should hope it's not serious.
But it's like there was also a brutal death metal slam band come out maybe like a month or so after COVID fully hit the world and called like COVID-19, and it's like
yeah, of course.
Yeah, and it was
I wonder how they're doing.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. Well, it's better than naming your child Corona, which is what some people did.
What the fuck is up with that? Like, why would you do that to your child?
But it's a shame because Corona is a nice word because it's like a solar flare
it's
type
like
thing.
It's like a halo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what a Corona is, right? It's like a halo of light.
So that word has been ruined.
Ruined, 0 out of 10. Do not name your child.
But the end of this album I really like as well. The last track, Become Ethereal, which is another Dragonborn shout learned in the game, which apparently the shout gives you a spectral appearance and you become invulnerable to damage for a while.
Spectral.
Yeah.
Word of the podcast.
Yeah, spectral. Spectral law, spectral
wound.
Wound.
Spectral paw.
Spectral Voice.
Spectral Voice.
Spectral Spectre.
Spectral Darkwave. Shout out to Spectral Darkwave. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of specters.
But this track's cool because it's an orchestral sort of track, so it's there's no guitars in it, so it's like almost it's quite cinematic and sounds like something you would actually hear in a game. So I don't know if that was the desired effect of that track, but it was quite a nice closer to the album and kind of adds another dimension to the album because, as I said, the majority of this album is just super melodic and soaring guitar work, which is I'm all about that because I love that sort of shit. So that don't bother me.
That's amazing.
But overall, it was a good album. And I heavily enjoyed it.
It is really cool. I have spent a lot of the time thinking about what game I would want to do like a side project band on. I think Chip's Challenge is going to be my choice.
Yeah, what game's that?
It's just like it's a Windows 64 game where you just like run around a maze and trying to find shoes to walk over fire and water and stuff. It's really good. But
That sounds cool.
I'm interested to see how I could like make an oeuvre of work about this game.
I think what would be the worst game? I'd say Solitaire. Or Minesweeper.
Spider Solitaire.
yeah.
Minesweeper, you could probably do some like really interesting like arrangements, like really beautiful, than something like a fucking bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Pac-Man, maybe.
that'd be a shit one.
You could like sample that horrible gulping sound.
Yeah. Can you imagine that just like if it was like a slam band, then everything would go quiet, just one China hit and the Pac-Man sound before a breakdown hits. That'd be sick. If someone does that, I'm coming for you, by the way.
I want to see that live. Yeah, there's a lot of potential here, I think, for interesting, fruitful game bands. I know there's a World of Warcraft band called Level 75 something Shamans. And they have a song called Never Take a Thief from Behind.
I mean, you couldn't think of a better name than Level 75 something. Is there not something else in the universe that sounds a bit more kind of, I don't know, not played the game.
Probably sounds about the Gnome Paladin.
Yeah.
Yeah. The game's okay, but...
Have you ever seen the interview because the Warcraft movie was directed by David Bowie's
really
son,
good.
Duncan
Idaho.
Jones.
Jones.
His name's Duncan Jones, who also directed Moon, which is an amazing
I love Moon.
fucking
I
film.
forgot about that film.
Such a good film.
It's really good.
I had no idea where that film was going.
It's got Bowie vibes as well,
Yeah.
that film.
But so he directed Warcraft, and there's a great interview where he's getting interviewed by this dude who is just so kind of like belligerent and like kind of on the offensive against him and just trying to get him to admit that this movie that this guy's directed is shit. And he deals with him with such poise and like an elegance in only the way that David Bowie's son can, that the other guy gets pissed off and just leaves. And he's just like, the guy just stands up and he goes like, oh, okay, fine. And Duncan Jones is just like, oh, okay. It's really worth watching if you want to see a really...
I've never ever seen that kind of... Usually it's like the interviewee that walks. Damn, bro.
God damn.
Usually it's the interviewee that walks out. That sounds amazing. And I will add, the World of Warcraft movie is legitimately amazing.
Oh, I've heard that it's really good.
It's honest. I was like, I'll just watch this. I feel like shit. I don't really care about this film. And I was like, damn, I'm really into this.
Yeah, and you know, and especially when you consider how high the bar for video game movies are, you know Resident Evil, Dead or Alive, Tekken film, Street Fighter. Who could forget Street Fighter?
Yeah.
Have you seen Street Fighter?
No.
Oh my god, it's like Shem. You must have seen Street Fighter the movie, right?
Yeah,
Of course, classic film. The Mortal Kombats.
Oh, Raul Julia is amazing in that.
Oh, that's like the last film he was in before he died as well.
Damn.
But
What a legacy.
he came up with one of the best lines in cinema history. So you came here and trust me to fuck it up. That's not what he said. That's not what he said.
Best line.
He didn't fuck up his lines. He said, you came here expecting to find a madman, but instead you found a god.
That's amazing.
And it's super corny.
That is very good. I like it.
One last note I want to say about the album. Well, actually, not so much the album, but Serena Cherry in particular, which is a fact that I've always thought was super cool, is her obsession with roller
I
coasters.
knew you were going to say that she's part of what, Coaster Force? I think it's
so.
called. That is really cool. I was like really surprised by that, but she seems really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a dream of mine to get out to Six Flags one day because
I'm scared of
it's
roller
got really good.
coasters.
It's meant to be really. Yeah, you said you didn't like it, right?
You nearly died.
Oh,
Yeah, Shem nearly died. Like
Fuck.
the thing didn't come down, and I know similar thing happened to a cousin of mine in Sweden
oh shit.
on like a similarly big roller coaster. It was like a famous one at the time, and the G-force is the only thing that kept him from falling to his death.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
But I was stuck on the Smiler at Alton Towers once, and it was like 30 degrees heat, and we were stuck when it was like on the way up, and that was horrible. And then we got free tickets to go back within like so yeah, because that's exactly what I feel like doing at the moment.
Jesus Christ.
But I do like roller coasters, and they have been a thing. And I actually went on a ride that was quite intense. I went to the South End a few weeks ago, and they've got this new ride. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like one of the arm rides that does a full rotation while the thing also spins as well. And it was, and I was just looking at it thinking, man, I had fish and chips about an hour ago.
Oh my god!
And like, this may not be a good idea, but it was a surprisingly intense ride. And South End have got their theme park, whatever it's called, I can't remember. Sorry, it's got some surprisingly good rides, and that was one of them.
Have you seen the Euthanasia roller coaster?
Do you die when you go? Oh.
Yeah, so there was, I can't remember, he was a European artist, and he designed a roller coaster that's supposed to kill you, but you have fun in the process. It's a really interesting design. So it's like you go up to like a really high hill, and like high, whatever it's called on roller coaster terminology. I'm sorry, I don't know any. But then you go up to this really high point, and then you come down on successively smaller loops, and then about like, I think a few minutes in, you just die, like, because the shape of the roller coaster does something to your brain that just kills you. It's designed to euthanize all of the riders on the roller coaster.
So basically what you're telling me is this motherfucker downloaded Roller Coaster Tycoon, fucked up a ride and found out it was killing his virtual customers, and has tried to market it as an actual...
I think he used like legit maths and science. Like, it's a really cool image. He obviously hasn't made it, but it was like an artistic foray into like, how can we kill people? It's got like a funny name. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got like a...
Can you imagine if they still took like a picture of you at the exact moment that you pass away?
So you could give it to your
give
loved
it to your
ones,
family, yeah.
And like mass emails it to like, oh my
Jesus.
God.
Yeah, no, I can think of better ways to go. I mean, I think of worse ways to go.
Definitely.
But
it's better than being crushed to death or something like that. Yeah. I don't know how I think I want to go in my sleep, obviously.
I don't know, because like, I don't know, maybe when I'm like 90 or some shit, probably the best way to go.
I mean, that's like is that a mode of death, being 90?
I don't know. I don't know how long I'd like to live.
I want to be immortal, basically. I'm pretty... Like,
would you upload your consciousness?
Yeah, I'd do it. Like, I'm into it. I think transhumanism is like completely fucked up and crazy, but I'm selfish enough that I'd want to actually do it.
Because there's an interesting one in it, because because obviously your actual soul in essence will be gone, but whatever's uploaded will still think that that's the original version of yourself, right?
The Faustian joke is on them. I never had a soul.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but there are people who genuinely believe that there are immortals walking the earth right now, because there's like a guy in Russia, there's Bezos, and the other one, Elon Musk. I almost called him Husk. Elon Husk of a man. And like, they're obviously, that's why they have, I'm pretty sure they're just amassing money so they can fucking inject themselves with young people's blood and live forever and whatever. Yeah. You know, so not that I want to necessarily do that myself, but if I had the option, I probably wouldn't say no if I was like in my 50s or something, you know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I'm in open with the dark side of my humanity, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's too much to think about, man. But no, I reckon.
So I get lip fillers, I just get like young blood injected to my veins.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't even know what's going to happen in the next month. I feel like I'm in limbo. So like, fuck knows what's going to happen in 50 years' time.
I'm pretty sure I'll die soon at some point, probably. Like, I don't see myself living a long time.
Yeah, well, we'll try and get Carl Willits on before that happens.
I would like that. That would make me really happy. I want to get Carl on, and just some people that I like. That'd be really nice. Yeah, once he's on, I can just die. It'll be fine.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'll buy you a ticket for that roller coaster.
Thank you. Best present ever.
Right, so talking about killer roller coasters seems a good way to finish off the episode.
I think so. If you want to find out more about killer roller coasters, feel free to like and subscribe. We'll happily talk more about them if you wish, and suggest anything you'd like us to cover. Any topics, any bands, any albums, any human beings you'd like us to talk about, we will consider doing so. So, thank you for listening. Have a lovely rest of your day or night.
Until next time.